Hi, everyone. Today, I'd like to talk to you about a very important question that was asked recently to be taught upon, and it is, what do we do when we get caught up? And how do we recognize it? How do we know? What is getting caught up? What is it all about? This feeling that we have so often these days of getting so terribly caught up in the world of appearances, not only external appearances, but also the inward, fluxing, swirling, chaotic emotions that we so often are engaged in every day, feeling whipped around by from place to place, and taking us into a world of unknown and out of control feelings. So, how do we recognize this feeling of getting caught up, of really going too far? And also, how do we then pacify that? And so, what I want to do right now, before we get started with this, is actually practice very quickly to pull our minds right back to this present moment. So, wherever you are, wherever you find yourself, in whatever context, your emotional, spiritual, psychological, mental state, as well as physical form, physical appearances around you, wherever that is, let us bring our minds back immediately from wherever they may be drifted to, right back to this present moment now. Okay, so now we are back here with this teaching, with you, wherever you are watching this video, listening to these words or reading them. Right here, this is where we are. This is where we are. Now we can look around, all around wherever we are, and notice this present moment. We can notice all of this world around us now. Okay, now let us look inward. And as we look inward, let us find all of the recent thoughts that we've been having right before we brought our attention back. Where are those thoughts? Are they easily accessible? If they are, let them return. We might know what our minds are on, have been on recently. Let that come up, well up within us. It might be feelings, it might be thoughts, it might be concerns about our days or about loved ones, about our tasks, about some projects. It might be all of that. It might be bodily pain or tension. It might be anything at all. Whatever that is, let us also bring that up. Whatever we've been thinking about, feeling about. And now, again, recognize this present moment. Look around and see the present moment, the present appearances around you. Look into the video, recognize what is around me here in this room, and then also let that also affect your environment. Recognize the environment around your phone or your screen. All of that, recognize that. And now, of course, look back inward at those emotions, at these thoughts, and bring that to mind again. And then look at the appearances, the space around your screen again, this space, my voice, hear it, and then go back immediately. Okay, these feelings, these emotions, these thoughts. What you might have experienced just now is a bit of a very quick dissolution that's occurring between these thoughts and feelings that we're consumed by so often, and then bringing our attention back to this moment here seems to dissolve those things. And then when we go back to our thoughts and feelings, it seems to dissolve our attention with the present. So we can kind of see through this, just this exercise, this kind of contrived, silly exercise that we just did. We can see how the attention of our minds really affects our entire worlds, our entire view of everything is about and focused in our attention. It's all attention based. Where we have attention, we then feel the reality of whatever our attention is on. So often in these very complex worlds that we live in, those are caught up in past and future thinking, planning, as well as very complex emotions about the world or systematic thoughts that other people and other organizations, other websites, this intermingled internet age we live in, all of that creates thoughts. We have thoughts about that, and we give attention to that. As we give attention to that, we feel all of these subtle feelings and thoughts that take us away from this present, uncontrived place that we are right now. And that's okay. That's okay. And that's actually quite useful a lot of the time. We might want to plan something. We might want to do something. We might want to do something nice for other people, for example. But oftentimes, what that can lead to, if we're not aware that we are caught up, is that we can't see the context of the present moment when we are hyper attentive to certain types of things. And so that is the when someone asks, well, how do I recognize when I'm too caught up or I'm caught up versus just living? That in itself is when we've lost the context, we've lost the thread of the present. We are so invested, so attentive to a feeling or an emotion, even feeling being like maybe a bodily feeling, an emotion, something more abstract, or something in, it could even be a present, something in our phenomena and our appearances, but again, only on one thing and not released to recognize where I am, what I'm doing, what the context of it is. How I look outside, I'm looking up at a big window. I can see the sky outside. There is a sky out there. There are trees. There are other people. There are birds. All of that is lost very temporarily when we focus. And that can be okay if we remind ourselves that we are in this context, a context of being in a present space that is okay and very wide in scope. I am sitting here in California. Outside, there is space. There is a forest out there. Out there, there is cars and people. And out beyond that, there are cities. And beyond that, there are countries. And beyond that, there is outer space. and so on and so forth, galaxies, and it goes on and on and on and on. And that is the context of our lives. So often we lose even the beginning glimmer of that because we don't remember that we're actually present in any sort of place, because we are so attentive and attention focus oriented into things that are not entirely present or not entirely within that context. And sometimes that's reasonable, but a lot of the times we have given way to that without any sort of recognition. We didn't even realize that we had gotten swept away. So how do we recognize that we've gotten swept away? And the answer is actually in discomfort. When we bring ourselves back to this present moment, as I invited you to, where you just look at the screen, you look around the screen, you recognize where you are, you recognize your body and its position in the universe. You take a deep breath and you rest. That's pretty pleasant. It's pretty pleasant. There's not a lot of discomfort in that. There's not a lot of thoughts. The fixations sort of start to dissolve. But when we're caught up, we start to feel tension. And tension, again, is perfectly normal, perfectly okay. And so if we know that we're caught up, we recognize, oh, we're tense right now because we're working on something, or we're exercising, or we're focused. That's perfectly reasonable if we recognize that that tension is part of our goals, part of this context of living, part of this present nature of being. But if we forget that and we just feel this tension building and building and building and bury it and bury it and bury it and ignore it, then what can happen is then we become more and more and more caught up in this swirling display of a fixation that we never agreed to. At least we don't think we've ever agreed to it. We don't really want to be fixated. And yet we are swept away in fixation, in a something, in maybe a thought, a concern, a worry that we've been having for quite some time that just we can't shake. And so we feel, it keeps us up at night. It makes us feel tense. It makes us even have body aches and pains. We have tension in our hearts, tension in our guts. I mean, potentially all sorts of things can come from that stress, all sorts of disease, heart problems, all sorts of breathing problems, maybe even addiction. All sorts of things can come out of that. So when we start to feel that pain, that tension, we can then use that as a flag to bring ourselves back. Hey, where am I? What am I doing? Where is my body? My body is here. I can touch my legs, or I can touch the ground. As I feel the ground, I feel grounded. Grounded. Grounded in the present. Grounded away from all of these thoughts, all of these concerns. And so sometimes we might find ourselves taken by a concern that is so strong, for example, that it is calling us into duty, calling us into action for a very long time. I mean, if you're, for example, a person that is a soldier, or if you're a person that is a caregiver, or you're a person that has a very stressful job, or a very stressful event happening in your life, you don't have the option to kind of say, "Oh, I'm going to listen, look at that and then touch the ground." Maybe you don't have that ability to pause in a very strong way and, take a look at the sky and take a look at the world around you and recontextualize things so you can bring your temperature down. And for you, one thing that can be helpful is as you are enduring whatever this is, which of course, if it's very stressful, we don't like it. As we're not enjoying these very stressful moments, as they are unfolding, breathe. Breathe. We generally don't think about breathing because it comes so naturally to us. But I'm actually making a case now for thinking about it briefly, just activating on it. Maybe not thinking about it too much, but activating on it mentally to breathe when the stress comes. In, out. Recognize the breath as it's coming in, going out. As we recognize the breath coming in and going out, then we will find ourselves connected to the air that's coming in into our lungs and flowing out of our lungs. That is actually the present moment. In and out, in and out. So even if we're called into a very difficult situation where we have lost all sense of reality, bring the attention back to the breath. This is something that is very commonly taught in Zen tradition, as well as other types of yogic practices, to bring the attention on the breath. And if that's difficult, then again, when we are in these moments, take just the briefest moment to look around. To look around. Doesn't take any time to move the eyes. Move the eyes away from whatever that is. And that's not only an external practice, but it can be an internal one. So we have fixations to certain types of mental universes, types of concerns and worries and things, emotions and pains. So every now and again, just look away from those with the mind. Look away. You can look with your human eyes. You can also look with your mental eyes towards something else. And as you look towards something else, recognize that the other thing is kind of not there temporarily. Temporarily, it's gone. It's all dissolved. It's like, what was that again? What was that worry? Oh, yes, now I remember. It's very serious. It's very serious. But for that moment, when you looked around or you looked towards something else, it wasn't there. And to build a practice, and this is not an argument for distraction per se, but it is an argument for contextualizing the problem, contextualizing the carried away feeling. As we are carried away, we can still look around. We are still breathing. So, are we carried away at all? And this last piece for you is really the heart essence, and kind of difficult to understand. Probably mostly because I'm going to be trying to explain it. It might not be so difficult for if someone else was explaining it, but what is the difference between getting caught up and not getting caught up? We explored contextualizing. Okay. So in one world, you have a context of the wider universe, in the other world, you don't. One, we're fixated on something, and the other world, we're looking at the sky or we're looking around in the present space. These appear very different on the surface, but there is just the same looker, isn't there? The looker sees the fixation. The looker sees the present moment. So, what's the problem? If I look at the looker, I don't see any problem. I don't see any space, present moment, space. I don't see any um, fixation thing, motion. Do you see anything? When you look at the looker, when you try to worry about something, bring up all that worry right now. Let's bring it up. And then look at it. And then look at the thing that looks at it. And then, okay, we're bringing ourselves back to the present moment. Breathing deeply. All peaceful again. I'm looking at the looker then. What's the difference? Is there one? When we start to look into this, we might find that what makes us caught up is our own saying so. We dictate it by some very subtle mechanism of mind. We don't have to, but we have for a very long time associated all this stuff, these worries, these thoughts, these appearances, this body, with a my life kind of thing. A association with a me, a possessiveness aspect. But if I don't do that, by just looking at this awareness, this looker, this looking, observant aspect of things, where's the quality, distinction between all of this? Sure, things unfold in this mind. Thoughts will change, feelings will change, fixations will cease and then become new fixations. Present moments will change. There will be new present places to explore. There may even be later on other bodies or other contexts of existence. A changing body at the very least. So all of that's true, but in the essence, the observer never changes. The observer never even appears in that context. Yet we are aware of everything. So maybe there is a real connection here between all of this stuff, these fixations, these appearances, and outward, this present moment, future moments, all this momentary things, and this observing aspect. And when we recognize that, maybe there's a lot more power that we have over whether or not we are happy or sad, over whether or not we are grounded or groundless, over whether or not we're fixated or not, or caught up or not. Maybe there's a way for us to be so caught up we recognize we weren't ever caught up at all. Maybe that could happen. But these possibilities aren't possible if we really, really believe that all of these judgments we make, all these observations that we objectify with a thinking, feeling, fixating mind are substantially true. And because of that, we stay very, very enslaved in a lot of ways, imprisoned in a lot of ways, to whether or not we believe things are good or bad. Whether or not we think that we are caught up or not. Oh my gosh, the moment I start to feel discomfort, woo, I am caught up. I am caught up. Oh, get me away from that. And then I run to the hills. And then I abandon my friends. What's the point of that? I've done everything stupidly because I wasn't able to endure the slightest discomfort. And the reason I wasn't able to endure the slightest discomfort is that because I thought I was so caught up. I am so caught up. But if the first moment the discomfort arises, instead of saying, I am so uncomfortable, get me out of here, we just recognized it as just like anything else, just like this present moment. The observer's always been the same all the time. Then I can endure anything. At least I can endure a slight discomfort. Maybe I could even practice to endure more discomfort. Because it doesn't have any association to a judgment. Into a, is this what I deserve? Into, is this what I need? These are the types of things that we say very subtly to ourselves. This isn't what I need. This isn't what I deserve. And then we are miserable. If we instead say, this is what I need, this is what I deserve, then suddenly maybe we can see this whole context a little easier. Maybe we can see that the context isn't bad. Maybe the present moment isn't scary. Maybe even when we're fixated and we're caught up in the whirlwind of emotions, we can remember, this is no big deal. It's no big deal at all. It never has been a big deal. It's just that I have a really strong habit of saying so, that it is. That is such a big deal. That sounds like a pretty good way to snap out of it, doesn't it? Takes a lot of confidence, though. It takes a lot of meditation. So I invite you to meditate on this. Look at the observer. Look in these different contexts. Bring your attention back on the present moment. Look at the observer now. See your relaxed state. See how that relaxes you. Oh, interesting. Now look at the observer. Oh. Now bring up all of the emotions. Remember the things that you're worried about in this world. Now look at the observer. Do that. See if the observer ever changes. See if there's ever truly a situation where the observer isn't your best friend, isn't always there for you to hold on to. Oh, the observer's there. Chilling as always. Always there. The observer doesn't have any quality. The observer doesn't make any judgments. There's a lot of other judgments being made, but the observer doesn't do it. The observer's always just without quality, relaxed. Even when I'm stressed out of my gourd. So start recognizing that, meditating on that. And then if that begins to gain some sort of confidence, start asking yourself this question: why are you not like the observer? Why is the observer always relaxed? Why is the observer always present? Why is the observer always without quality? But I am judgmental, worried, stressed. Well, if I'm the observer, I shouldn't be any of those things. So maybe it's time to unwind some of that. So thank you so much for listening to this. I hope that something in my rambling, off the wall style today has hit an essential piece of you and it's given you confidence that no matter where you are, no matter what's happening, there's no need to worry. It will all change. And even if it stays the same for quite some time and it's very uncomfortable, there's a piece of you that's changeless, that always is stable, peaceful, and free. Much love from the bottom of my heart.